Hey Rebel Rouser, I'm Alan Voivod and this is Star Wars 7x7, your daily dose of Star Wars joy. And thank you so much for joining me for it. And thank you especially to the patrons who help make this possible for you every single day with their support at patreon.com/SW7x7. So I'm very happy to be back in the studio here with you and ready to talk about Day, which is episode 4 of The Acolyte. We're going to do our 7 takeaway breakdown. We'll start by doing our high level thing that we usually do. The episode is called Day, of course. It does sort of imply that our next episode is going to be called Night, considering that we have had these, dichotomy episode titles with the first 2 that we got right, and the fact that this episode mostly takes place on the daytime side of the clock on Kofar, when both the good guys and the bad guys are in a race to try to find Master Kelnacca. This does have the feel of kind of an in-betweener episode where we're basically setting up chess pieces before the next major event happens, which, then we get to that major event as the cliffhanger of the episode. And we actually get a different idea about what Kelnacca is up to on Kofar in this episode. We've been previously given to believe that he was in hiding in some fashion, but we find out that he's actually posted there by the Jedi Order. However, he has not been heard from in more than a year. So that does make you wonder if something happened that made him decide, yeah, I'm kind of done. And maybe it is his conscience getting to him finally. Like when we see his walls, they have all the markings that are similar to the Ascension ceremony tattoos that we saw in the previous episode. So yeah, there's some serious obsession stuff going on. And, it definitely kind of connects to the idea of Torben being in meditation and not speaking to anyone for 10 years. Maybe just took a little bit longer for things to catch up with Kelnacca, but longer lifespan too. For our second and third takeaways, we're going to talk about Osha and how there are conflicting things happening with her. We'll start with the fact that when we see her at the beginning of the episode, she's trying to get away from the Jedi Order. She's like, yeah, I'm out of here. This is not my fight anymore. I've cleared my name. It's up to the Jedi to handle May, and I am more than happy to be out of here, right? However, that kind of gets made into a lie of sorts, or at least maybe not true from a certain point of view, if you will, because when Sol hunts her down at the spaceport and says, hey, I need you to come with me, her reaction is like, oh, you want me to come back to the Jedi Order? And he's like, no, I want you to come back and help me get May. And so there's definitely some disappointment in Osha for the way that Sol is asking her to come back. It is not about being a part of the Jedi Order. And when they actually get to Kofar, there is that moment where Osha says that she feels like her force sensitivities, her Jedi powers are actually starting to come back to her, and there's definitely excitement for her about that. So yeah, there's conflict in how she's feeling about the Jedi Order and her place within it and with her connection to the Force. And there's also that bit about not wanting to wear the non-civilian robes that non-Jedi have to wear when they're going on a mission with Jedi, and she's stuck in those robes anyway, and it's kind of an embarrassment to her. And then the other conflict that she's feeling, which is our third takeaway situation, has to do with May herself. So she's initially saying, yeah, May is the Jedi's responsibility, I don't want anything to do with it, but she ultimately is convinced that she can be a part of what happens to May. And she's convinced by the idea that there is still good in May potentially, which maybe Osha felt that in the second episode of the show. Maybe she didn't. She felt something that made her decide to pull her shot. And so there's definitely something there. However, she's still not convinced and has to pull Yord aside for a moment and say, yeah, if you're not able to bring her in, then I need you to promise me you're going to take her down. But strangely enough, the Jedi actually don't think that May is going to put up a fight. And maybe they're kind of tuning into the future a little bit, because for our fourth and fifth takeaways, we're going to talk about May and the conflicts that she is feeling. Starting with the fourth, we'll talk about this idea of killing a Jedi without a weapon and how May believes that it is impossible, and it has been getting progressively harder to consider that idea because, yeah, maybe Indara was tough and maybe Torben was like a little weird of an experience, but a Wookiee is on another order entirely. Like, if you're going to kill a Wookiee without a weapon, you know, they're formidable physical fighters already, you know, let alone being able to use the Force. But there's been some grammatical discussion about that phrase about killing a Jedi without a weapon. And does it actually mean that you're supposed to kill a Jedi without you yourself having a weapon? Or does it mean that you're supposed to kill a Jedi who does not have a weapon themselves, that has been disarmed? And it seems like the way May is reading that statement is the latter, right? You get that idea from the slow motion moments where when she's fighting Master Indara, she goes for Indara's lightsaber and misses, and then in the next episode fighting Master Saul and tries to grab his weapon and doesn't get it. So it seems like she's thinking that she has to fight a Jedi who does not have their weapon. Otherwise, I personally would have said that by the former, by the idea of not using a weapon to kill a Jedi, that she's already succeeded, right, with Master Torben. But yeah, I guess she doesn't see it that way, and neither does Qimir in the way that he's talking about her and saying, like, you failed so much. And for a fifth takeaway, then we go to the other conflict, which is how the presence of Osha alive changes things. Initially, it didn't seem like that was the case. Now she is conflicted in her mission. She doesn't want to kill these 4 Jedi anymore. She just wants to be reunited with Osha and wants to turn herself into the Jedi, wants to tell the Jedi what she knows about what's been going on with this character, the Stranger. She thinks she can get out of whatever deal she's made with him and survive potentially. So yeah, that's going to be iffy, of course. For a sixth takeaway, we'll talk about Qimir, and yeah, we keep raising this sort of is he or isn't he question. Is he the stranger behind the mask? And certainly there is enough, you know, similar storytelling in Star Wars history where it could definitely be the case that Qimir and this stranger are one and the same. I mean, how many decades does Palpatine hide his presence from Jedi who were right in front of his face all the time, and yet they had no idea that he was a Sith? I mean, yeah, by comparison, this would definitely be a lot easier to pull off. And he certainly plays hapless pretty well in the episode, right? With a little stumbling and then getting caught in the Ewok rope trap. So classic. But we do know that he has that other side to him, that confidence and that menace when he walks up to Osha in the second episode and says that she looks exactly like her sister, right? The fact that he picks up on it and just the way he delivers that. Yeah, there's definitely more to the character, but you know, we could be being sold a red herring situation here too. And for our seventh and final takeaway, we'll do a little fun fact situation here. So we get a guest appearance from a different Jedi who appeared in the prequel trilogy. That would be Ki-Adi-Mundi, right? The Syrian, I guess that's how you say it, or maybe it's close to it. The Conehead Jedi, if you will. And he is not played by Silas Carson, who played him in all of the prequel movies, but by someone named Derek Arnold. So that was a little bit of a bummer. I was hoping for Silas to be able to come back, but nah, you know, that's okay. Congrats to Derek Arnold for being able to take on the role. I know there's been a bit of drama around his appearance because allegedly, according to Legends material, he wasn't necessarily born by this time, but that was Legends material. And so, yeah, we can do whatever we want here, basically. So, yeah, ultimately, kind of an in-betweener episode with some interesting character moments that happen while we're waiting for something to happen, which does finally happen at the very end of the episode. And, yeah, we'll be talking more about it in tomorrow's episode as we do our deep dive situation. So for now, that's going to do it for today's episode of the podcast. If you enjoy the show, please do share it with other folks that you know that would like to have a daily dose of Star Wars joy in their lives. You can do that with ratings and reviews. You can do that with likes and comments and follows and subscribes and joins. And you can also just tell people that this is out there for them. That would be super helpful and I would really appreciate it. And you can even help support me as an independent creator, putting putting out this podcast on the daily for almost 10 years now, and you can learn more about that at patreon.com/SW7x7. And it just remains for me to say thank you so much for joining me for this episode as always, and may the Force be with you, wherever in the world you may be.
7x7 is not endorsed or sponsored yet by Lucasfilm Limited, Disney, or 20th Century Fox, and is intended for entertainment and information purposes only. Star Wars, the Star Wars logo, all names and pictures of Star Wars characters, vehicles, and any other Star Wars-related items are registered trademarks and/or copyrights of Lucasfilm Limited, or their respective trademark and copyright holders. May the Force be with them. All original content is copyright by Star Wars 7x7. We hope you love it.